look at y'all. Y'all are just really doing big things. And one of the ladies said, because you inspire us. And it was almost like a light bulb went off. And I'm like, that's what I want. I want to inspire people, and whatever that looks like for you, and it may be different for the next person, but I want to inspire. I want to inspire people in some way.
Welcome to Spark Joy, the podcast dedicated to celebrating the KonMari method and the transformative power of surrounding yourself with joy and letting go of all the rest. With your hosts and certified KonMari consultants, Kristen Ivy and Karen Sochi. And now, here's the show.
Supermom by day, superwife by night, and invisible all the time. This is what happens when you retire the superhero cape, remove the mask, and begin the journey of who am I? How did I get here? And how long will it take to pick up all the broken little pieces of my life? Our guest today is Kizmat Tention. Kizmat is a life coach and author who has been making big waves with her new book, Broken Little Pieces. Since then, she's been touring and speaking about her work and sharing her very powerful message of finding your authentic self. She lives in Atlanta with her husband and 2 children. I really loved her book. It is very emotional and very much enjoyed reading about her story. It allowed me to get very deep into her story about becoming invisible, experiencing great loss, and emerging vulnerable and real. Welcome, Kizmat.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Welcome to Spark Joy, Kizmat. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
So we probably should start by talking about your book, Broken Little Pieces. There's a great quote in there. It's a journey to take all of the pieces to create the mosaic of your life's mural. So beautiful. Could you share some events that shaped your life and your own personal journey and that I'm assuming inspired the book?
Yes, it was life. It was waking up one day, realizing what is going on? Why am I constantly striving, trying to find happiness when on the outside looking in, I had the perfect marriage, the perfect family. I had the house and the picket fence. I had everything that society said, you're doing good. But I knew something on the inside wasn't right. Something was missing. And I felt like I had to get to the root of it. I'm a get to the root type of person. As a life coach, that's what I do. I take my clients on this journey of let's get to the root. Let's get to the why. But I couldn't figure out what that was for my own life. And for me, for whatever reason, when you're trying to find that source of that emptiness and that void, for me, I look toward my husband. So I felt like he was the reason. He has to be the reason why I'm unfulfilled and not really happy in life. Surely it's him, because my kids, I get fulfillment out of them. My career, I get fulfillment out of that and life. But I felt like he was just the reason why I just couldn't experience what I felt like real authentic joy was. So I started going down this rabbit trail of why am I here? Like, am I really, did I marry wrong? Did I miss it? We parent so well together. And, when you don't have the type of marriage where you're arguing and it's violent, like we didn't have any of that. We parent very well. We had a very, what I thought was a peaceful home, but I later realized I had a quiet home. And there's a difference between quiet and peace. There was no arguing. There was no communication. There was really not much of anything outside of parenting. So I felt like I was at the end of my rope. I felt like I wanted out, but I wanted him to be the one to say I wanted out, because I didn't have the courage to say, I don't want to be here, So I kept prompting, are you really happy? Do you want this? Do you want more? But he would never give me the response that I wanted, to validate my feelings, because it really was just one-sided. It was me. It wasn't him.
Right.
So I said, you know what? Let me just start writing. And I didn't write for the sake of writing a book and becoming an author because that has never been my dream. I wrote because I was at the end of my rope. And I was like, this is the only thing that I can find fulfillment in. And to give you just a quick backstory, we had a son that was stillborn about 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, you know what, let me get back to doing what I love. You know, I went into coaching to help moms who had experienced that loss. So let me go and write, because something kept saying, write. And I'm like, well, write about what? Okay, all right, I'll go write about how I survived after losing my son and how I was able to find hope and healing in my life. And I don't know when the storyline switched and it became about me. And I realized, like, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with my husband. This is all me. I'm empty. I'm broken. In fact, I was broken before I married him, and marriage only magnified what was already there.
Wow.
And why do I feel the need to wear a mask and be this super mom and this super wife and this super coach and just super everything, but all along feeling invisible on the inside? And when you feel invisible, it's so easy to perfect a mask because you can be whatever you want to be in that moment. And at some point, you're wearing so many different masks that you don't remember who you were in front of who. So it was like, okay, which mask did you know? Did you know the mommy mask? Or did you know the life coach mask? Or did you know the wife mask? Like, which mask did I show you? And so I began to just go down the rabbit trail of, when did this happen? How long have I felt invisible? And I realized that it went all the way back to my childhood, where I was a middle child of 3 girls. I grew up in a very religious household, and we spent a lot of time in church, but I didn't have any gifts that were important in the church. So all my sisters could sing. I couldn't sing. I was an athlete. So at church, I felt invisible. You know, people often didn't realize my parents had 3 girls. They thought they only had 2.
Wow.
Even now, a couple of months ago, I was with my mom at a store, and she ran into an old friend from church. And he was like, who is she? And she was like, that's the middle child. That's the one nobody knows.
Well, that's so interesting that you bring this up, because one of the things that really struck me in your book is when you talked about your journey from childhood to adulthood, and how part of that was so ingrained in trying on different roles and identities and kind of discovering your mask, so to speak. And you spoke a lot about your position in the family as a middle child. And it seems to have been a very important factor in your search for yourself. I've always been really fascinated and interested in the idea of how sibling position impacts our development and the way our personalities grow.
Yes.
And so in working with women as a life coach and in your own in your own work on yourself, have you found that middle children seem to share the same kind of similarities and seem to get lost?
Well, it's funny you ask that, because I never even thought about that until I wrote the book. I never realized how much of an impact being a middle child had on my life. So it never even dawned on me to ask my clients, well, are you older? Are you the oldest? Are you the youngest? Are you the middle? It never even dawned on me, because the thing about my book and why it feels so raw is that everything that I experienced happened while I was writing the book. So everything came out literally as I was writing. For me, I thought it felt more like a therapy session where I just poured out my heart, you know. So this realization of, wow, you were dealing with middle child syndrome and you didn't even realize it.
Interesting.
That came out literally as I was writing the book.
So then I guess that's really helped your work then as a coach.
Yes.
For sure. Because I mean, I do think that really does seem to play a role, you know, and I mean, each child, whatever your position, there seem to be certain roles that we take on. And even when you even when I don't know that somebody's an oldest, I'm an oldest. And even when I don't know someone's an oldest, I can almost pick up on that.
Right.
It just seems like we fall into different roles just automatically. It's so interesting.
But is it automatic, or is it, well, someone told you, well, you're the oldest, so you're supposed to be the most responsible. You're supposed to watch after your younger siblings. You're supposed to be, the one who helps out more around the house. Sometimes we get all these roles passed down to us, and we take on that identity and say, okay, well, I'm the oldest, so I'm supposed to act like this, and I'm supposed to do this. And some people carry that weight for the rest of their lives, and sometimes even a burden, because you may feel like, especially if your parents are deceased, you may feel like you have to be the one that continues to keep the family together and to just still always feeling like you have to lead when that may really not be your natural genetic makeup to be in that role,
That is so funny. Now, as you're saying this, I'm having a memory of when my little brother is 2 years younger than I am. And I have this very distinct memory of walking into school. I was in third grade. He was in first. And for some reason, he got in trouble right behind me and got pulled out of line and had to go stand against the wall or whatever it was. And I remember going into my classroom and going up to the teacher, and I was mortified, and I was just like, my little brother just got in trouble. And she said, as the oldest child, a lot of times you're going to feel very responsible for your younger brother. And I remember just bursting into tears when she said that. So it's interesting because I don't think I even thought about it myself until she said that. And it's almost as though she gave me that identity just by making that statement. So interesting.
Yeah. You call it identity. I call it a mask.
Yeah.
It's, and a lot of times we've been handed on, sometimes masks can be generational. It's passed down from generation to generation, and you're supposed to act like this, and you're supposed to do this, and you're supposed to go to school and be a doctor and grow up. It's all these, identities that we pass on to other people, especially those we love. Sometimes it's not intentional, I don't know if I spoke about it in the book. I know I spoke about it at my book signing. In high school, I used to fight all the time. And I never understood. And my mother kept asking me, why do you fight so much? And I was like, I don't know. I can't help it. And while writing the book, I remember that as a kid, I was quiet. And I was like, well, if I was quiet, how did I go from a quiet kid in elementary school to this all-out fighter in high school? And I remember that in middle school, my little sister had got into a fight, and my cousin, who had this just known reputation for fighting, came in and asked me, did you jump in the fight? And I was like, no, why would I do that? And she was like, because that's your sister. And the next time your sister get into a fight and you don't jump in it, I'm going to beat you up. And I was like, oh my God, no, I don't think anybody could beat me up worse than she can. And from that moment on, I became a fighter.
Wow.
And I asked her, and she called after she read the book, she called me crying like, oh my God, I know I'm wearing so many masks. And I told her, I said, do you remember that you gave me one? And she was like, wow. And I said, when did you become a fighter? Who gave it to you? And she said, when I was starting school, my brother told me, he said, you know what? You're pretty, you're light skinned, and those girls are not going to like you, and you're going to have to fight all the time.
Wow.
Her brother gave her that mask, and she's been wearing it ever since.
Wow.
And passing it out.
Wow. Now I'm trying to think, what are the masks that I'm wearing?
Yes.
Wow. I'm fascinated by this idea of mask. And I know you talk about this in your book for sure. And we here at Spark Joy, we're all about confronting things per the KonMari method and the KonMari way. In this case, the things is clutter rather than emotions. But there's definitely emotions that come up during the process.
Right.
So some of our listeners are struggling with this. They are actively trying to declutter, and they're pulling things together and getting really real and honest about the amount of things that are in their home and how they impact their life. And they're peeling back layers physically and emotionally. So is there some advice that you could share with our listeners on how to identify masks and maybe what to do after that to move forward?
Well, even with the KonMari method, it's sometimes you almost have to even ask yourself why. Like, why am I so attached to this? And does this thing that I'm attached to, does it validate me? And what validation am I seeking to gain by keeping this, whether it's an heirloom, or something that you feel like is passed down. Some people pass down china from generation to generation. And I'm like, honey, when are you going to eat on those dishes?
Right.
And you're passing down this tradition of, it's in the family, but it's just sitting in your cabinet collecting dust.
Right. Yeah. I love, there's a designer that encourages using your china on an everyday basis, like on a Sunday for breakfast or something, actually using it. Just like with your other dishes. Why we save them for guests?
Exactly.
Treat ourselves. Right?
Treat yourself.
Yeah.
You're important enough right now to have the final things in life that are stuck away in a cabinet because you're only supposed to pull it out for Thanksgiving or holidays or whatever.
Right.
I don't even believe in dining room tables. I'm like, no, I will not have a big formal dining room table with dishes set out that nobody can touch. That is so insane to me. I'm like, I can't. Like, why? I'm going to the couch, to eat. But just sometimes you have to really get to the root of what you're holding on to and why, and what reward are you getting from it? Is it attention from someone else? So you can say, oh, I did this, whether it's to fit in or be a part of something, or I always talk about who are they. And we make so many decisions based on what they think, what they say, how they feel. And we've never even took the time to figure out who they are. Like, sure. Who are these people? Who are they? Can somebody raise their hand and please tell me who they are? But yeah, they keep us paralyzed in fear. You got so many people that won't even take a risk on doing something they love because they're worried about what they think.
Sure.
Yeah.
At some point, you got to say, you know what? Enough is enough. I got to live for me. And it may not make sense to anybody else, but to the people in your household. We downsized from a 4,300 square foot, 4-bedroom, 4-bath house to a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment.
Wow.
It is 3 of us. I was like, y'all, do y'all realize we only live in half of this house? There were parts in the house we didn't even go in. I'm like, why are we here with all of this house? Big old yard. Don't nobody want to cut the grass. Everybody fussing because don't nobody want to cut the grass, and I'm mad fussing because I'm the one that got to keep it clean. And I'm like, no, don't go in that room. Shut that door. Nope. Because it's clean. So leave it alone. Just walk the other way, and just because society says, oh, when you get married and have kids, you're supposed to have a house and you're supposed to live in the suburbs. And I was like, I kind of want to move to the city. I kind of want to go live in a high rise somewhere with a city view and enjoy life. Mm-hmm. And my husband's commute went from like an hour and a half to 5 minutes.
Right.
We're closer to a restaurant, so we go out more. Like, we are creating a life that makes sense to us. Doesn't make sense to other people because they're like, wait a minute, you had a beautiful house. I'm like, okay, and I still got a beautiful home. I'm the home. A house ain't nothing but a big storage box. And the bigger it is, the more you got to fill it up.
Yep.
So, no, that doesn't define me. It doesn't define my family. And we're creating a life that makes sense to us. And you don't have to understand it. And somebody was like, well, what about when you get gas? They can go down to the Embassy Suites and get a room. It's right down the street. Or we go old school and you can get on the couch and the floor and get you a blanket and a pillow and call it a day.
Right.
That's how we grew up. And we were good. Why would I have all this house in hopes that somebody might come once a year?
That's so true. When I think about all the conversations I've had in my own head about, okay, well, I'm going to make this decision and let's see, what will someone else say about it? And these imaginary conversations, I was running track of like, okay, well, what will this person think about that? Or what will my mom think? What will my sister think? And it's just the insanity of that. But it's so true. It's almost like this running dialogue of how will our decisions impact other people when that's completely pointless. And there's really no purpose even doing that.
Yes.
But I really love the line in your book, regret and perfectionism are companions. We fear having regrets, thus propelling our mindset into the ways of perfectionism. I just love that. And I think that many times we're really afraid to begin to make changes or to go down a different path because we're afraid of not doing it perfectly. Has that been your experience? And how do you suggest that a person begin to work through that?
you change the dialogue of failure. Failure is fail fun. If you just say, I'm going to go fail, that takes away the fear of it. It's funny how when you have a kid and they're learning to walk and they fall down, we cheer, good job, baby, good job. You fell down, now get back up. As a kid, as a baby, as they're learning to walk, they fall and fall, but they keep going, and we cheer and we push them. And you have to do the same thing to yourself in life. You may fall. It's okay, get back up. You may fall again. It's okay, get back up. Maybe you need to change your shoes. Maybe you need to try a different direction. Find that, take away the fear of failure. To me, failure is to die with all of my dreams. Failure is to not reach the women that I'm supposed to reach. Failure is me just being paralyzed in fear and not doing anything. So at this point, anything that I do is a win. If I mess up or try an idea and it doesn't work, I'm still winning. If I go the wrong way, I'm still winning. I'm going. And I'm not stopping. So you have to redefine success. And you have to redefine failure and take the fear away from it.
That is powerful for sure. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners could apply that to their own journey when they're thinking about starting to tidy, when they get in the moment, which is a little bit difficult. Usually it's around paper or books, the third category or the second category. And things start to get a little tough. It's all about, defining what success or failure means. If you've tried at all, that's a huge step. I tell my clients that a lot, that a lot of people don't even get to the point where they can say, I need to do this, and start. So that's just, wow, so powerful. And we can all use a little bit more of that in our lives. So Kizmat, I would love to touch base with you on something. I'm curious, when you were going through your trials and tribulations in your journey, how was your experience reflected in your home? Did you feel the tendency to clean on any kind of level, or even on an obsessive level? Or did you tend to collect clutter? We'd love to explore kind of your mindset and how your journey kind of manifested within your living environment.
Okay. So the last house that we lived in before we downsized was a really, really big house. But it was very empty because I didn't believe in filling rooms for the sake of filling rooms. However, during this time, there was this weird need to shop and kind of buy things to try to fill the space. And I know my attempt to fill the space was a reflection on the emptiness that I felt on the inside. So it was, since I'm not processing and dealing with my inside, I'll process and deal with things that I can control. So I'll go and start buying little things in an attempt to try to make my house feel more like a home. And, thinking like, I'll make it more warm. I'll try to create moods in these rooms, but yet it still never happened, So there was this, and I think everybody has their coping mechanism. And at the time, I don't think I even realized that I was coping and trying to fill a void, and shopping became my attempt to do that, my attempt to feel better or enjoy or create a space that I felt like would be more fulfilling. But you never get that feeling. You just keep buying more and more and more in hopes of something, maybe a piece of furniture or some clothes or something, hoping that something kind of gives you that wholeness. But, it never does. It never does.
Yeah, we often ask ourselves here in Spark Joy, what does our clutter say about us? So it almost sounds like that what your clutter was saying was there was something unfulfilled or something unfinished in your emotional space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And even with that, I would still give away a lot of things. It was so weird now that I'm kind of thinking about how it was almost like a revolving door. I brought things in, sent things out, brought more things in, sent things out. Okay, I brought this in. It didn't make me feel better. Let me give some things away and bless someone else. And maybe that'll make me feel better. Nope, that didn't really last long. So let me go bring something else in, But it was like a revolving door of emotion and wanting and searching, and I think we all kind of hit that point, we just may hit it on different ends, even with cleaning. It's 1 minute you're cleaning, next minute you're like, whatever, let it go, and then I'm cleaning again and I'm like, just forget it. I'm tired of cleaning this house. I'm the only one. And then I'm cleaning again, still in that cycle of searching and wanting and hoping. But
how did you eventually break that pattern?
It all came out with the book. And I sat down not to write a book. I sat down to try to find my therapy and my healing.
Sure.
And in my writing, and at the time, it wasn't even, it was almost like a brain dump. I just came to the computer and just poured it all out. And I had no idea what it would look like in the end. I just knew that there were things that I had kept in my head and my heart that I needed to get out. I needed to see it somewhere on paper, just out of me. And I think it wasn't until I was at the end of that journey, of that writing therapy session, that's what I really called it, that big therapy session, that I was able to kind of look back and say, oh, wow, that's what that was, because sometimes when you're in the middle of it and you're going through it, you can't really identify it and you can't like put a name to it. You just know something's off, and I don't like it. And and sometimes it's so subtle, but you as a person, and other people can't see it. And they think, oh, you're fine. Life is good. Be grateful. Be happy. Don't worry. Be happy, But at some point, I think it's okay to want more. Like, yeah, life is good, but life can be great, And I'm willing to figure out what this is to get to my great. And that's what that journey was for me.
Oh, wow. That's so really profound. In our work, a lot of times we work with our clients as they go through the process of exploring not only who they are now, but who they wish to be. And I think what you just said really speaks to that. And this idea of a vision, the vision statement is really a touchstone in the KonMari process. And thinking in terms of what do you see as the vision of your ideal life is something that we really try to focus on as we go through this process. Do you feel that your experiences have informed who you are now and what you hope for yourself in the future?
Absolutely. I have a private Facebook group, and I encourage them and I challenge them to go and take risks and to not be afraid of failure and to just embrace it and be willing to do something, just try something. And now they're all writing books and, starting their own businesses and doing all these things. And I was like, look at y'all. Y'all are just really doing big things. And one of the ladies said, because you inspire us. And it was almost like a light bulb went off. And I'm like, that's what I want. I want to inspire people. And whatever that looks like for you, and it may be different for the next person, but I want to inspire. I want to inspire people in some way. I had to do a radio interview this morning, and at first I was kind of nervous, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what they're going to ask, but then I just told myself, just go inspire someone, that's it. Just go inspire someone, being you, and take off and move all the other ideas of how you're supposed to sound or look or just whatever. Let all that go. Remove all those expectations and just go inspire.
Wow, Kizmat, you've definitely inspired us for sure. And we're just so happy to have you on today. And before we wrap up, we just want to ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
So at this very moment, what sparks the most joy in your life?
When people are brave, when they are able to just move beyond their fears, to take a step. And I call my tribe. I tell them, it doesn't have to be a giant step. I'm not saying you have to go and write a book, but a step is a step, and if you just take that first step, the second one will come and it'll be a little easier. And then that third step will be a little easier, and to just create your own lane, because sometimes I think we miss the mark when we compare ourselves to other people that are doing the same thing, and you see their success and time, and you feel like, well, man, how did they get such a following so fast? And, what is it about them that people are drawn to them? And I always say, your people will find you. And when I first published the book, I had all of these expectations, but I was really kind of setting myself up for failure, because it's like, I want to be a bestseller. I want my book in every household. Mm-hmm. But then I was like, but what if your book only reaches one person and it changes their life? Will you still have that heart and that desire? Or do you only feel validated if you've touched millions? Is that one not important enough? And so I tell them, find your one, whoever your one is. And maybe for a season, you may be your one, and that's okay. But find your one, and anything else is just icing on the cake. So if one woman was touched by my book, I found my one. Everybody else, they're just icing on the cake, and they don't validate me, and they don't define me, and I don't allow somebody else's success to make my success feel like a failure, because my success doesn't look like their success. And you have to take the time and redefine what success looks like for you, and what are your true heart reasons for what you're doing? Because if it's money, it'll never be enough, because you'll always be chasing the next dollar, But if your heart is to serve and to help others, then you'll always win. You'll always win. You cannot lose.
I love that. Wow.
I was going to say I have goosebumps now after hearing that. That was so great.
Well, before we leave you, do you have any final words of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners?
I just say, be bold and don't be afraid to go and create your own lane and redefine success. And don't define your success when you're comparing someone else or looking at someone else's journey, because at the end of the day, you don't know what they've been through. You see their glory, but you don't know their story.
Sure.
And if you knew their story, you might not want their path. So be confident and be okay with creating your own lane, and just making sure you keep that heart check, and making sure that you see people and not dollar signs, making sure at the end of the day, when you lay your head down at night, that you were a light to someone, that you inspired someone, and that could be a smile, that could be a hug, just whatever. Inspire someone daily.
With that, we just want to thank you, Kizmat. Wow, inspire someone daily. Love it. Thank you so much for joining us here at Spark Joy. It was great having you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. To connect with Kizmat, you can visit brokenlittlepieces.com and follow her on Facebook at Broken Little Pieces, or on Twitter at Kizzymat, and that's KIZZYMAT, or on Instagram at Kizmat_Tention.
So now we want to hear from you. Tell us your burning tidying questions, or share stories about how KonMari has impacted your life.
You can find us at sparkjoypodcast.com and click Ask Spark Joy to leave a question or comment for a chance to be featured on next week's show. You can also join the discussion on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at the handle @SparkJoyPodcast.
Thanks for tuning in, and we hope your day sparks joy.
Thank you for listening to Spark Joy with your host, Kristen Ivy of For the Love of Tidy in Chicago, and Karen Sochi of the Serene Home in New York City. Spark Joy, the podcast, is not endorsed by or affiliated with KonMari Media Incorporated. The opinions expressed on this episode represent the views of the co-hosts and guests alone and do not represent the corporate position of KonMari Media Incorporated or the KonMari consultant community.